So following the course of the Penguin show and the now finale, we know that this is leading into the Batman 2. So I just wanted to go ahead and look at the information we've been given and kind of speculate as to who the villain or villains will be in the Batman 2 and the rest of the Reeves universe. And also, just before I get started, just kind of more of a spoiler warning. I'm not going to cover a lot of spoilers in this, but they're going to be attached to some of these ideas. So just getting that out of the way before I get started. So starting with Hush, I think there is a few small Easter eggs that really can't be overlooked. So in the Penguin series in the middle of this season, when we had the episode that showed Victor's origin story in terms of the death of his family following the flood, there was a really subtle Easter egg that's been noticed, and that was the Elliott Bridge sign shown on the freeway just before the explosion and the water tumbling through. And we can trace the Elliott name back to Hush, particularly Thomas Elliott. So whether or not this was him specifically or someone in his family, such as his father or something like that, it could be somewhat of a subtle tease as to where they're possibly taking this in terms of the antagonist in the future. And then we also have to go back to the Batman movie because you also have the Elliott name being teased there. This was particularly the reporter who was looking into Thomas Wayne and Carmine Falcone. So that also could be a connection to something that could evolve the emergence of Thomas Elliott. And then we even have the specific word hush being shown in one of the Riddler's newscastings. So I think that's definitely something that's been planted as a seed there that could really emerge. But following the finale and the Penguin show and where we're left overall, I really think you have to consider the Penguin's place in Gotham and eventually his future clashes with Batman. We did get some of that in the first movie, of course, but I wouldn't really say they were an even match by any means. And then just going through the Penguin's evolution throughout the show, now we really see him rising and taking over Gotham. So I definitely think that the Penguin would be an interesting matchup for Batman, but most likely, since we've already got a show that's focused on him, it's possible they are going to go a new direction in terms of the villain. But we do know that the Penguin is definitely going to make a presence. He's rumored to have around 5 or 6 scenes in the second movie. And then he's also confirmed for the third movie as well. So it's possible he even has a bigger role in the third film. But I think either way, we're going to see him face off with Batman or even possibly Bruce Wayne. I think that's highly an option. Just given that we've seen kind of more of the raw Batman in the first movie. And then now we've seen more of the raw Penguin and his thirst for power throughout the show. It's possible we get a different side of both of them that's highlighted in the Batman 2. Besides the Penguin, you really also have to look to Sophia Falcone and now her new potential connection with Catwoman. We don't really see her in that good of a place in terms of really being a prominent figure due to what happened at the end. But the door is definitely open for her to make her return. I think the letter is a really interesting touch, and I think her possible relationship with Selena Kyle could be something that would be really interesting to unfold. And I think they are probably going to be some sort of a problem for Batman, or maybe they'll be a little bit more in the middle in terms of having Batman still being outside the law, but still pretty much following a moral code. And then you have, I'd say, the Penguin now on the other end with a lot of the more evil villains in Gotham that don't really follow any sort of code and are just really out for themselves or whatever sort of ideology that they have. And I would say that Sophia Falcone would maybe fall a little bit closer to the anti-hero or anti-villain category. And I think we saw that really come out of her in terms of her not really being too hungry for power, but kind of just using it to get her revenge on the people that had it coming for them. So I really think seeing how Sophia and Catwoman fit into the equation is going to be an interesting dynamic for Gotham. But now going into the fourth option, which I think is a lot more less likely now, just given what happened at the end, the real real big twist, I would say, in terms of the whole show would be Victor, because I really thought Victor was going to evolve to become someone significant in Gotham, and I thought we were really starting to see his trajectory in terms of standing up to the bully in Crown Point. But I think it was definitely one of those shocking moments for the finale and really threw a wrench in any sort of plans for Victor. But before any of that happened, I really thought you had a lot of hints at what Victor could turn into. You even have the little subtle things such as him being referred to as Knife Boy just by holding a butter knife, and along with his name that would obviously foreshadow Victor Zsasz. And I thought even if that wasn't the case, it was definitely going to be interesting seeing him become the Penguin's underboss and being his right-hand man throughout the Reeves universe. But just looking at the slight possibilities, I think, of what happened, it's not like he got shot in the head or anything like that, where it is a really definitive death. It is possible he was just passed out and barely had a pulse, and he's somehow going to wake up and he's going to re-emerge in the Batman 2 or the Batman universe somehow. And I would think if that is definitely the case, that would be a really great origin story for Victor. I would really see Victor going off the rails and really becoming a problem. But most likely, I think they are going to stick with Victor, unfortunately, passing, and I think that's really a shame. And then number 5, I think this is a little bit more of a fan favorite, but there still is runway for this to take course, and that would be Mr. Freeze. I would say in terms of any sort of Easter eggs in either the first Batman movie or now the Penguin show, I wouldn't really say there's any sort of indication as to going the Mr. Freeze direction, but you do have to look at the setting, and that would be the wintertime in Gotham, and then seeing a little bit of the snow falling at the end of the Penguin, and even Matt Reeves directly stating that the Batman Part 2 is going to take place near Christmas time. I think that is really the possible foreshadowing of Mr. Freeze emerging. And then at 6, I think this would be a really interesting one, and I think this is a really strong possibility for the direction of the antagonist, and that would be the Court of Owls. I do think you have a lot of subtle teases in terms of the Penguin finale alone, along with kind of the more gloomy and kind of darker hints to the corruption in just the Batman movie itself. But in terms of the courtroom scene with the Penguin, specifically the irony in the specific room being the courtroom in terms of the Court of Owls, I think that was a really interesting tease within itself. But you also do have the subtle shape of the owls in terms of the curtains in the background, so I think that definitely wasn't something that was done by accident. So I really think it's possible that the Court of Owls is the possible direction for an antagonist that's maybe somewhat apparent in the second movie or even in the third after that. And I think it would really be interesting as we now see Oz gaining these connections in politics and really gaining connections to a much higher power. If that higher power really does lead up to the Court of Owls and we now see the Penguin or Oswald Cobb becoming a member, I think that would be really interesting, whether it's shown directly or kind of being hinted at throughout the Batman universe here. And I think in terms of an antagonist or a villain overall, I think it would be really interesting seeing a group as the antagonist in terms of Batman kind of facing off against this elite group rather than another figurehead such as just Batman versus the Joker or Batman versus whoever. I think the Court of Owls as the overarching antagonist would be a really interesting thing to see. But kind of in relation to both Oz and the Court of Owls becoming a problem for Gotham, I think the most likely case of what we're going to get is a combination of villains and maybe just Gotham being the overall antagonist of Batman throughout the whole story. And I think we kind of got that dynamic in the first movie. And in addition to that, I think you still have the possibility of the Riddler and now his connection with the Joker being hinted at the end of the first movie. It's definitely possible they could escape somehow. You have the inspiration for the War of Jokes and Riddles comic, but it is also possible that they're saving this for maybe another sort of spin-off show. But I really think there is just so much potential for the Batman universe, and I now think you have an excellent stepping stone being completed with the Penguin show. But feel free to let me know any sort of speculation or theories you guys have as to the direction for the second movie, in particular the new antagonist, and I'll see you later.